I'm back. I'm back. I'm back. I was gone, but now I'm back. I was gone, but now I'm back. I got Bucky Barnes. Let's go. Bucky Barnes, we're on the roll. Okay. Hi guys, it's me, Fanfic Panda. I am back. I missed you guys so much. I missed doing this. I missed my microphone. Missed it. I'm like, hi. You're so beautiful. Okay. So basically what happened was I went to go dog sit my uncle's house and dog. That sounds weird. I went to go house sit and dog sit for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and I forgot to bring my mic with me. I left it, and I was like, no. Yeah, that sucked. That really did suck. But I am back. I'm sorry for the wait. I'm going to post more fan fictions, and I'm not sure if I came up with it. Someone else probably already done this before, but I'm going to start doing headcanon Thursdays. So every Thursday, you guys get a headcanon fanfic video. So that should be fun. I just need to get some headcanons first, and then we'll start doing that. Yeah. Also, I just gotta say, I'm in love with this cover. Like, you'll get the reference for the burnt photo when you get to the end of the video, but it's like, ah! So I hope you guys enjoy this. Make sure to go support the author because we love authors in this community, and I'll see you at the end, guys. Bye! Bucky threw his arm around Elle's shoulders as they watched a movie to settle down for the evening. Elle smiled and turned his head to receive the kiss he knew was waiting for him. Bucky was far from subtle when it came to staring a hole into someone. The small kiss turned into a little more. Bucky's perfect mouth making Elle melt until he parted his lips and moaned quietly as the man explored him. A vibranium hand caressing his side over his clothing, whilst the other cradled the back of his head. Buck. Elle breathed his name. His eyes had slid shut, and he tilted his head as Bucky deepened the kisses. Elle felt the other's fingers at the hem of his top and broke their kiss. Bucky. It was a little firmer this time. Elle's hands pushed gently on his chest, and the brunette took the hint. He pulled back and placed a kiss on Elle's forehead. Elle avoided the man's gaze, looking blankly at the screen. He knew Bucky wanted to be intimate with him. He wanted it too. He had imagined Bucky making love to him in bed, fucking him against the wall, and Elle couldn't count the times he'd masturbated to the thought. He just hadn't told Bucky the truth yet. He was terrified to do so. Seeing a head tilt in his peripheral, Elle swallowed thickly, still looking ahead. I'm sorry, Bucky. Bucky lifted Elle's chin with his thumb and index, turning him to look. Hey, he murmured gently, blue eyes forever patient and kind. You don't gotta be sorry if you're not ready. Who am I to tell you otherwise? I'm not upset. I'm just worried you are. Elle smiled at him lightly and pressed a chaste kiss to his lips. They'd been together for a year and a half, and never once had Bucky pressured him into sex. He'd met the brunette at his gym. Elle remembered he'd almost crushed himself on the bench press, and Bucky had to come out of nowhere to catch it before it fell. Shit! Elle gasped in shock. His arms were shaking and he panted as his heart hammered from the rush of adrenaline. He watched wide eyes as the stranger put it on the bracket with one hand. Fuck. Am I that puny? Bucky filled his vision as he laid there and tried to process what had nearly happened. I'm just that strong, but that's why you shouldn't lift without a spotter. He pat Elle on the shoulder and went back to his own workout. Slowly, Elle sat up and took a deep breath, glancing at the sweaty brunette as the man lifted weights like it wasn't a chore. Elle found himself hypnotized by the way the man's muscles moved under his tight, long-sleeve top. You need some water? Bucky had turned to him with a blinding grin. Uh-huh. What? You look kinda thirsty, fella. Elle couldn't remember having ever blushed so hard. They had started working out together, Bucky giving him pointers on building certain muscle groups. And then he asked Elle out for dinner after Elle reached his first target weight. Elle kept a picture of them on his phone from when they first met. He couldn't believe that was him when they first met. When he looked in the mirror now, he could grin at his reflection. Bucky had caught him flexing a few times and teased him. After 7 months, Elle had been comfortable enough to take his vest off during the summer season. He'd been embarrassed when Bucky's eyes had run over the almost invisible matching scars blending into the crease of his growing pecs. They aren't really... He unscrewed the vest he had crushed into his hand and made to put it back on. The confidence he'd been feeling suddenly evaporated. Bucky caught his wrist and shook his head. I didn't say a word. I guess. He looked away and stood silent, wondering how he could escape the situation he had just made so awkward. A rustle of clothing caught his attention, and he looked up to find Bucky with his top halfway off, the material covering his left shoulder and arm still. Elle couldn't help but stare at the bared, tan skin covering hard, defined muscles. The man was beautiful. Though Bucky's expression was best described as troubled. I'm not gonna be offended if you want to walk out the door, Elle, but you should probably see it sooner or later. Elle looked confused, and then his lips parted and his jaw went slack as he saw what Bucky had been hiding all this time. Bucky's left shoulder, part of his chest and ribs, his entire arm. Elle could only stare at the prosthetic. It was so carefully made. Even the muscle definition matched the right arm. It looked as if Bucky had dipped his arm in a black metallic latex and then had an artist carefully inlay it with gold. It's beautiful. He hadn't meant to speak out loud, and he turned into a jabbering idiot to cover up what he thought was a mistake. I'm sorry. I didn't mean... I hope you don't hate it because it's nice. It's a part of you and you're nice, so yeah. I used to hate it. Bucky pulled his glove off, and Elle reached for it before either really thought about it. Vibranium fingers flexed and moved to show off the dexterity. It was something I couldn't control, and I didn't think I could change the way I looked at it. But now, I think I'm getting used to it. Elle stroked their palm up the length of Bucky's arm. It was smooth and warm. Then he came to the neat seam of metal and flesh. Scars much more prominent than his reminded him that Bucky had lost a limb. And here he was gushing over a replacement. I'm sorry you got hurt. The brunette's fingers traced along one of Elle's chest scars. Don't be sorry. Not every scar has to remain a sad story. That had been the turning point in their relationship, and Elle had been the happiest he had ever been. Until recently. When he had started to feel anxious that Bucky wanted intimacy, and Elle was terrified of the prospect. He had to tell the man the truth, but it could ruin everything. Bucky didn't know about Elle, that he was trans. He had almost told him once. It had been the day that Bucky had to awkwardly explain his history. That he was an ex-brainwashed assassin from something called Hydra, and that he was born just before the 1920s. He'd taken Elle to the Smithsonian Museum, introduced him to Steve Rogers, and laughed at the way his boyfriend stuttered and nearly tripped up whilst introducing himself. It had been a lovely day out at first, but then as Bucky had to tell him about all the awful things they made him do, Elle felt their troubles were so minor in comparison, and held the other tight instead. Bucky, I need to tell you something. Bucky paused the movie and sat up straight. He could hear the serious note in his boyfriend's voice, and if he were honest with himself, Bucky knew something had been coming for a long time. He had already created so many scenarios in his head, and each got worse the more he pondered it. About why I can't... He gestured between their bodies. It's not you. You don't know how bad I want you. I know you might think I don't because
Well, I stop you every time. What I need to tell you is... fucking hell.
Elle stood up from the sofa and paced the room, frustrated at himself for being unable to speak. Bucky sat forward and held his right hand out.
Just stop for a sec.
He knew that Elle had confidence troubles, knew that he struggled to speak in complete, coherent sentences when he got anxious, and that in turn made Bucky feel on edge.
Hold my hand.
Elle stopped and took the man's hand, squeezed it and took a deep breath in. He held it for a few seconds and then exhaled.
You got this.
Bucky smiled up at him, and Elle didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The smile was slowly replaced by a more concerned expression as Bucky looked up at him.
Did someone hurt you? Is that why you're so nervous when we get close? Because you know I'd never hurt you, Elle. I wouldn't force you to.
Elle placed his fingers to Bucky's lips and knelt in front of him.
No,
he said quickly.
Nothing like that, Buck. No one's done anything like that to me.
There was a fleeting wish in his mind that that was the problem. He felt ashamed immediately for the thought and berated himself silently.
Elle, you're scaring me, fella.
Bucky had told him his darkest part of his past, and Elle couldn't tell him something that was bothering him. How bad was it? Elle stood suddenly and headed out of the room.
Elle!
Bucky got to his feet and made to follow.
I'm coming back. I just need to... What I need to do is...
His fist hit the frame of the door angrily, and he huffed.
I need to get something.
Bucky nodded.
Okay.
He sat back down on the edge of the sofa and waited, his fists opening and closing nervously until the other man returned with a piece of paper in his hand. Elle sat beside him and gingerly held it out. He let Bucky take it from his shaking fingers and study the old photograph, the only one he had of this person. It was a photo of a young woman. The brunette sucked his bottom lip into his mouth and stared at her. Caught himself thinking that her eyes were the same as Elle's. She was pretty, and she looked a little awkward, almost like she was uncomfortable in her own skin. She wore an oversized shapeless sweater. Her arms were crossed over herself, and Bucky glanced up at the man beside him.
Is she your sister?
The other man had never spoken about his family, and Bucky wondered if this girl had something to do with it. He could see a worn place on the photograph. A single corner told him that maybe, just maybe, Ella tried to burn it. She looked so alike to him, but at the same time, very different.
She's not my sister.
A muscle twitched in his jaw as he clenched his teeth, and he began to draw into himself, a feat much harder than his skinnier days.
That's...
Elle sniffed and swiped the back of his hand under his nose.
That was me.
Drawing his eyebrows together and frowning at the photo, Bucky blinked twice slowly, letting the silence and the new information sink in, analyzing it, turning it over and over until he simply nodded. He leaned forward and placed the photo onto the coffee table.
I'm transgendered.
He said it out loud, and it felt like glass in his throat.
The scars on my chest, they're from when I had my second operation. I had my uterus, womb, all the plumbing removed first.
Now that he had said it, he found that he couldn't stop.
I have testosterone hormone therapy, and I know I told you I was putting money aside to pay a student loan. That's not true. I'm saving to have bottom surgery, because I still have my old parts.
Bucky still hadn't said anything, and Elle took in a shaky breath.
Buck, I'm sorry.
Was he sorry? He felt like he should be, but at the same time, Elle knew he shouldn't apologize for wanting to be himself.
Sorry.
Bucky leaned back on the sofa and let his head fall back as he stared at the ceiling. He then seemed to nod to himself and sat up again. He turned to look at Elle and grabbed his shaking hands with both of his. He ducked his head a little so that he could see the other's eyes and told him to raise his head to look him in the eye.
Don't be sorry.
Bucky told him firmly and repeated it.
Don't be sorry. Buck? I'm not sorry,
he told him straight.
I'm not sorry that we met. I'm not sorry that I asked you out. I'm not sorry that we're together. I'm not sorry that I'm falling in love with you. I'm not sorry.
Elle scoffed slightly.
I just told you I'm not... Well, I am a man, but I wasn't... But...
He hated being so nervous.
You know what transgender means, right?
Bucky was from a very different time, and Elle believed he was taking it so well because maybe he didn't understand.
I'm 100 years old, but I understand what you're telling me.
He gave the hand in his another squeeze, letting his boyfriend know that he was there, that he was real and wasn't gonna get up and leave.
You're a man. Whether you have a penis or not, doesn't matter to me. You're Elle. You're my guy. You didn't want me feeling you up in case I found out?
Elle nodded and Bucky leaned in to kiss him.
Socks?
Elle let out a watery laugh, suddenly overwhelmed by the acceptance and casual way Bucky treated him.
Not socks. There's a dick down there. It's just detachable. God, I wish I could remove my balls sometimes, because when it gets hot, shit, I'm not gonna spoil it for you. You'll find out for yourself.
Bucky listened to the other laugh and smiled lightly, brushing away a tear that had escaped Elle's eyes. It was a surprise, but as long as Elle was Elle, he didn't care. Boy, girl, fluid, as far as Bucky was concerned, and Elle was happy. Elle was his man. This was a beautiful fanfiction, and I just got all of my emotions, because that's what happens when you're a theater kid. It's just so hard to think about someone not getting this nice of an ending. Like, you just get rejected for wanting to be yourself. I hope everyone gets this as a, oh my god, sorry. I hope everyone gets a beautiful ending like this. Sorry, oh my gosh, I wasn't trying to be all emotional at the end. I literally did the same thing when I finished reading this the first time. Beautiful fanfiction. I loved it so much. Please go support the author. And I hope that you guys all of you guys have someone you can truly love and care for, and they don't care who you are, what you look like, who you love. They just care that you're happy, because that's what you guys deserve, and that's what I'm saying. Hashtag love everybody. Hashtag be you, boo. Okay. See you at the I'm right there in the video. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm gonna go get some tissues, and I hope you guys yeah, I said that already. Sorry, my brain is like yeah, okay, bye. Oh gosh.